Hi. So recently there has been renewed talks of a potential Scottish independence referendum. It looks like Sturgeon's going to go ahead with this and call for one in 2023. I think the time she's scheduled was October 2023. Not sure about the precise timing of that, but it's not surprising. Nicola Sturgeon heads a party whose sole existence is about Scottish independence and, by definition, the breakup of the United Kingdom. I've never equivocated on this. I'm a unionist. My country is the United Kingdom, and I don't want to see it broken up. It's that simple. I won't make this one very long because I'm sure there'll be a lot more to say about the subject if it does indeed go ahead. Legally, the UK government has absolutely no necessity to accept this. Um, I mean, if we had a written constitution, which we don't, but if we did, it would likely be unconstitutional for a range of reasons. The fact of the matter is, in the Acts of Union 1707, um, and they could talk about coercion or whatever, but the fact of the matter is, both parliaments, the English Parliament and the Scottish Parliament, independently verified that treaty to join together as the United Kingdom. At that time, the Kingdom of Great Britain, and later the United Kingdom. Um, it just saddens me and frustrates me that this still goes on, that they are still pushing this agenda. It doesn't surprise me because that's what they're all about. Um, but when I look around the world, when I look at the problems that the world has, this is not a positive movement. They will say it's about a positive vision for Scotland's future. It's about standing on their own 2 feet, and that's the way they will present it. But when you really dig a bit deeper, what Scottish nationalism is about is the politics of resentment. It's about division. Because whatever way they gloss it over, by definition, it will mean the breakup of the United Kingdom. Um, and by definition, it means that an international border will go up. Um, That's the reality, whatever way they try to gloss it over. And I also believe that Anglophobia is deeply entrenched in Scottish national circles. Now, Nicola Sturgeon will never display that because whatever you think of her, she is a seasoned politician. She's never going to be crudely say something anti-English. She's clever enough to be assertive in that sense. But if you look at pretty much any Scottish nationalist forum, particularly the likes of Wings Over Scotland, it's pure anti-English bile or anti-British bile. It's all about how evil Westminster is, and the English have subjugated us for years. So it's actually the vilification of a nationality, the English. They've subjugated us for years, and so on. Uh, they actually ignore some historic facts. For example, the Scottish Age of Enlightenment, that is, if you like, a golden era for Scotland, an era of great intellectual prowess, philosophy, and so on, came after the Acts of Union. It was roughly the 1820s. At that time, Scotland had 3 universities. England had just 2. Now, my point is, it came after the Union. This wasn't some bygone age in the sense of that was a better time when we were out of the Union. Scotland's best years, I would argue, were within the Union. Now, is things perfect in Scotland? Certainly not. They will point to, for example, poverty. They will point to homelessness. They will point to problems that they say this is a result of being in the UK. But bear in mind, a lot of those issues are devolved. A lot of those issues are devolved, and the SNP has been running Scotland for what, 7 years? Um, so you can't blame everything on Westminster, and that's a convenient excuse that the SNP always use. Um, I just think it is very sad to see this. Also, and this point has been brought up because I think it's an important point. Nationalist leaders themselves, Nicola Sturgeon, Alex Salmond, they clearly said, they clearly said in that 2014 referendum that it was a once in a generation referendum. Now, what is a generation? Well, I think one fair way to look at a generation is the time that someone comes of age. So at least 16 years, i.e., let's say someone born in 2014, they come of age and they're 16, so that would be 2030, right? Um, that would be a time period where they can say, has Scotland been good uh, during my lifetime? And they have now reached a maturity where they can make a decision on that. That's a generation. A generation is not 8 years or 9 years as it would be next year. Um, but the truth is, the Nationals were pushing this from 2015. As soon as they lost, and they did lose, as soon as they lost, they were trying to have a rerun. This is why I fundamentally don't like referendums, because whatever the result is, the losing side is going to, the same with Brexit. And as much as, I voted to stay in, I was disappointed by the results. But you can't keep demanding a rerun just because you don't get your own way. That way, nothing will ever get done. There isn't enough time to know what the consequences of a decision are. So I think with any referendum, there should be at least a generation between them. I even say that with Brexit. I don't believe that there should be a rerun of the EU referendum anytime soon. Um, it's neither being, with a brief reference to the EU referendum, it's neither been the glowing triumph that Brexiteers said it would be, nor has it been the disaster that Remainers said it would be. I honestly think it's a bit too early to really, really tell. There are some issues that have changed. We've seen, for example, visas will come in for travel to mainland Europe. Things like that didn't exist before, but it hasn't been the disaster that some Remainers said it would be. But nor has it been the absolute triumph that some Leave people said it would be either. Um, and with Scotland, I remember I was there on referendum day. There was no violence, but there was enough tension. I remember a guy saying, "What part of Scotland are you from?" And I told him, "Well, actually, I've come from northeast England," and he spat on the ground. This is another mindset I want to challenge with Scottish nationalist thinking. They think because it involves Scotland, then only Scots should have a say. But this is a bit of a deception. Why? Because whatever the consequences are of the result, if Scotland gets independence, it will have implications for the rest of the United Kingdom. It will, by definition, because it means there will be an international border. I mean, look at the complications over the Northern Ireland Protocol regarding Brexit. So there'll be an international border. There'll be all sorts of issues to do with trade there that directly impacts businesses in Northern England who would be trading with Scotland, with businesses in Scotland. It implicates people on a personal level. My parents live in Scotland, and I don't want to have to show my passport when I visit them. Um, they can say it would be a soft border, but it would still be an international border. And yeah, from a patriotic perspective, it means the end of the United Kingdom. We would be finished as a great power. We would no longer be in the G7. Um, we would no longer be on the permanent UN Security Council. Now, some people with an anti-British worldview would relish that. They would say that would be wonderful. I can't wait for the downfall of British influence. But some of us do still have some patriotism. I think that would be a terrible thing. And it just saddens me. But most of all is the arrogant hypocrisy that nationalists have. They talk about democracy, they talk about giving Scottish people their say. Scottish people had their say and they clearly voted to stay in the United Kingdom. So, as far as I'm concerned, nationalists are in no position to talk about democracy because they have been ignoring it ever since that referendum. They've simply ignored it. I haven't once heard Nicola Sturgeon say she accepts the results of the 2014 referendum. That's an insult to the 2 million Scots who voted to stay in the UK. I believe it was just over 2 million people, which is a very big proportion of the Scottish population. Um, I mean, it wasn't that close. It was, I believe, 55 to 45, or even if it was a bit closer than that, it was a clear result of victory for the Better Together side. I mean, for all this talk of Project Fear, I call it Project Fact. And I find it a bit galling that the nationalists talk about unionists being negative. They're the ones who want to put up walls. They're the ones who stoke up resentment. They're the ones who still have the myths of panic burn in their heads. I'm just so fed up of their attitude. And I just think that despite what they say, there is definitely a deeply entrenched resentment there. Like the wicked English are ruling over us, despite the fact many issues are devolved. Um, One could ask what the people of Shetland and Orkney think of Holyrood's rule. I mean, where do you draw a line with this? If we go back in British history, should Northumbria really have independence? Because it was an independent kingdom up until the unification of England. The same with the other six kingdoms of the Heptarchy. This is a complicated enough world as it is. Why make things more complicated? Why put up more international borders? And frankly, it makes no sense to want to leave a 300-year-old union, 315 years to be precise, to rejoin a 47-year-old union. Then there would be questioned, why is Scotland skipping the queue? You know, when countries like Bosnia and others, Ukraine for that matter, are trying to apply. Um, I just think it's very sad, and that's my take on it. If Sturgeon goes ahead with this, and she will, because, you know, the nationalists exist for nationalism. Unfortunately, all it will do is create more divisions in Scotland. Scots will be pitted, nationalists against unionists. Unionist Scots will be smeared as traitors to the cause. They'll be seen as not true Scots. It's just going to create more division. Um, and on the issue of democracy, you know, it's not about getting exactly what you want. Put it this way: in the American presidential races, states often will vote against the winning president. That doesn't mean that that isn't democracy. For example, Biden didn't win Texas, but Joe Biden, as the nominee of the party that won, had the right to become president. Um, Likewise, there's many people in England and Wales don't vote for the Tories. To this line, the Scottish people don't vote for Tories, yet we have a Tory government against our will. The point about the Tory government is it's not the government of England, it's the government of the United Kingdom. Hence, the results of the United Kingdom are what matters. The results as a whole. You can't say, well, this area, this region, or this nation, in the case of Scotland, didn't vote Tory, therefore the United Kingdom government is some sort of dictatorship. Because of our system, it's determined by the government as a whole. In fact, if we look at Germany, excuse me, the state as a whole, if we look at Germany, the ruling chancellor, as it stands, SPD, with an alliance, there will be states in Germany that voted CDU, but they still have an SPD chancellor. It's democracy. You don't always get what you want. The point about democracy is giving people a choice, and Scots do have a choice. They have a choice to vote for Tory or not. They have a choice whether the local MP is a Tory or not. So this idea that they have no choice, so many issues are devolved. Um, I just think it's a misconception, and I think it's part of their scaremongering. And indeed, if they really want to get rid of the Tories, they should support English Labour. Or rather, there is no such thing as English Labour, I should say. They should vote or support Labour candidates in England. You know, if they really want a British government that will deal with those sort of socialist centre left issues, then they should hope for a Labour government. Because the SNP, well, firstly, will it really deliver on the sort of things that they're talking about? But um, they won't help, you know, poor people in England. They won't help homeless people in Wales. So if they're really interested in the plight of the poorest in society, are they only thinking about those in Scotland? If they really want to change, then they should hope for a Labour government.